Hey guys, hope you're having a good day. Um, I want to mention at first, to start this video, that I'm feeling very happy that I found my enough kind of discipline and energy to make this video right now on the spot. Um, I'm very happy that I was able to do this even though I don't really have enough energy to be looking at bright lights. So the lighting in this video is going to be more natural. And otherwise, I'm just happy to bring up this topic, which is a bit of an uncomfortable topic, but I would be very curious to see what this conversation takes us. And if you have any thoughts, please let me know. The topic I want to talk about is the importance for high achieving people, growth focused people, growth oriented people, in whatever they do to realize their ultimate solitude part of that process, and realize that in majority of cases, and I think I actually want to be more extreme, pretty much in all the cases, we need to ask ourselves first and last to be aligned with what we consider to be important, instead of asking other people to be more or even slightly more aligned with our values. I think for me, over the last couple of years, as I started to develop deeper, further interest in analytical psychology, in philosophy, in various other, human sciences like history, for example, um, my values and preferences in life have changed somewhat strongly. But I have to admit that even though I myself have been creating a very significant amount of I've been very demanding of myself to do proper studies, take small experiments, try to change my life in certain ways. I guess I have to acknowledge the fact that I'm ultimately kind of a very intellectually curious, creatively curious, and also very energetic person when it comes to you know setting up some experiments, trying out new things, um, uh, respecting new perspectives. I come to a realization right now that um, sometimes I forget that this is just me, and I forget that there are plenty of people in the world who do not share exactly the same mindset. And I find myself sometimes, if I'm honest, finding myself in a situation when I forget about it, but I, how do I call it? The switch doesn't get turned off when I speak to other people. And this creates a challenge because sometimes I may approach a conversation with the person as if I was talking with myself, or as if I was talking with the person who deeply shares the same values and perspectives as I do. And ultimately, this experience is disappointing. And it's disappointing because ultimately that other person very often doesn't um, follow on the passions and interests and values that you share. And when I say values, I mean deeper life values, like the way how you see life, the way how you approach communication, the way how you approach boundaries, the way how you approach spending time together, the way how you approach, in some broad sense, manners, by which I mean language, attitudes, timings, and everything else. Um, Quite important, I guess, to keep in mind that as you're discovering your own values and as you're getting closer and closer to the way of life and perspectives which help you be very comfortable in your own life, in some sense it's your bubble. It's arguably even more critical to develop a more attuned sense to realizing what are the values of other people, because I think in the beginning of life, perhaps it's much easier to find common ground when you don't exactly know who you are, because I guess you are more malleable. Like there are just more, there are just, it's much easier in this part of life to be convinced with the definitions of, correct and incorrect things, interesting and not so interesting things, the way what's right and what's wrong. And then over time you realize how many different perspectives there are. At some point you lose count with all of them. and then perhaps at some point you become more interested in finding out what this question means to you. You might spend some time researching this, or God knows, maybe you just end up in a situation where you well, okay, it wasn't expected. Let's see if I can bring this back to life. Should be good now. Yeah, I hope it works. Let me maybe turn it a little bit. Nice. I think for people who are curious about studying, curious about understanding, they, I think, are naturally curious about teaching. Because if you value knowledge, if you value new information, if you value better understanding, if you value growth, then in my opinion, it's very possible that you're gonna respect the information, you're gonna respect the process of learning, and you're gonna respect the dynamic between a student and the teacher a lot. And that means that you will probably search for good teachers out there. You might be searching for them in books, might be searching for them in some movies, might be searching for them in your schools, universities, communities, groups, chats online, YouTube. I really hope that you do, because I think there are plenty of interesting people out here. But it also sometimes means that when you find a person who might be doing something that you consider to be off, it's very easy to jump in a position where you become a teacher to a student who never asked to be tutored, and that's a difficult thing, because the thing is, this let's call him or her unconscious student, this person might even be kind of grateful for your advice, but I think the real trouble will be that they don't mind you sharing the advice, don't mind you sharing the information quite often, unless obviously you share this in a very condescending format where you kind of look down on the person, but let's assume that you just give a friendly advice. The real trouble happens, I think, to us as people who value learning, value studying, value growth. When we realize that the person didn't take our advice, didn't listen to it, we feel like we have been wronged, or we feel like perhaps we might even have been attacked if we shared some deeply personally relatable truths that we think should be very applicable to the situation that the person is in, and then they ultimately take no interest in following on that advice. We might feel so connected to this piece of information and sharing this with the person that we almost might feel like it personally hurts us. Now, obviously, when I say it like this, it's pretty clear what the issue is, right? The issue is in us unconsciously assigning a student role to another person, unconsciously believing that they're asking for an advice, then placing ourselves in the position of a teacher and then sharing this information with them, expecting it to help, and even if it helps, and assuming that it helps, we expect them to be grateful. There are just so many layers to these assumptions, it's crazy. There are many things that are ultimately wrong with this. That said, I do think that still happens quite often, especially when you kind of think or you feel that you are kind of aligned with the person, or you're very close, or maybe you've been close for a long time. My point is, there are many ways to lie for yourself or be a little bit deceived by your own stubbornness or pride, in a sense. So that's just something I wanted to mention, because I think if you are, a lucky possessor of, curiosity, intelligence, you have energy, you like to dedicate time to make things be better, do better, then it's very important that you appreciate it. It's very important that you respect it and you dedicate energy and time to nourish it. It's very important that you find people who are like you, who can do those things with you, where you can be seen and you can feel heard. Because I think that's the way how you can really replenish a lot of energy. But it's also important that when you step out into the world with all other people outside of your small community where you can share these values, you really think, well, however many times, 2 times, 3 times, you can say it for yourself. Ask yourself, what can you expect from other people? Because for some people, for some things in life, it takes a very long time to change. And I really when I think about this and when I speak about this, my thoughts really go to nature when I think about this, because there are some things like some plants, some trees that grow very quickly, don't really need much. You can call them very aggressive, very stubborn, or whatever. And there are some things that just take very, very long time to develop and very long time to grow. But it doesn't make them, it makes them different, but it doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them worse. But it's just very easy, I think, to fall into the belief, especially when you consistently see things that you can solve, things that you can improve. I think it's very important to put this boundary between yourself and the outer world and allow things to move at their own pace. And sometimes find yourself in a position of grief, sadness, or anger. Maybe you see the situation which you feel is developing in the way that it shouldn't really be developing, or maybe sometimes you have a person or a situation that that could be changed, or you think could be changed, or you think there are some things about it that can be tweaked, or you think like there is something about your own life that you think that you can make it better if only that other person see a certain truth that he or she doesn't realize. I think this can really hurt. And it's very important in these moments. Wow, this thing is really testing my patience. It is really testing my patience. I realize that DJI equipment has different values than me. I think in these moments more than the others, it's important to, I guess, have patience. Maybe that's the ultimate mention of this video, is remember boundaries of other people, remember where your own boundaries end and where your zone of responsibility ends, and for the rest things that you can't control, have patience, be curious, and believe. But I think I'm speaking to myself here, I probably should really focus more on trying to remember where the zone of my responsibility ends. Even if I'm curious about many things, even if I want to change many things, even if I have a lot of energy to do it, it doesn't mean that we are all powerful. We still need to remember where our power and where our skill is appropriate. I hope this message was helpful. I hope you found this interesting. If you have some thoughts on this, questions, or you have your own perspectives, I'll be very curious to hear them down below. Thanks a lot for, spending the time with me today, and thanks for bearing through the issues with the equipment also. Thanks.